So you want to turn a pair of pants or a jumpsuit like this into a skirt or a dress? Stick with me and I will help you answer the 3 questions you need to ask yourself before you start this project. Hi, I'm Carrie and I am so glad to welcome you to So Darn Fun today. I had a client bring in this jumpsuit that she wanted made into a dress. But first there were some questions that I asked her before I took on this project to find out if this would be something that would have an outcome that she would be happy with. So the 3 questions that you should be asking yourself start off with this one. Is there enough circumference to make it work? So to find this circumference, what you need to do is you need to measure one leg. Measure it at the length that you want your final skirt to be. So in the case of this jumpsuit, my client wants it the full length, which goes all the way down to her ankles. So when I measure the one leg, it equals about 15 inches flat on the double. So of course, that would be multiplied times 2, which would give a circumference of 30 inches around one leg. Add that to what the other leg would be, and that would be 60-inch circumference around her ankles. So if you want your skirt shorter, then you need to measure at that point what the circumference of each leg would be. So what if it's going to be a little bit too narrow for comfort? Can you force it to work? Well, there are some options, and we will discuss those in a minute. And then of course, number 3, how do I make this alteration? What's the process? So of course we're going to go into that. Let's talk about all those things over at the table while we actually make this jumpsuit into a dress. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Here's the inner crotch seam of these pants, and this is the seam that we need to pluck out. Or if it's extra full, and you know you're going to have plenty, you can just cut off from the inside and save you some time. In my case, I'm going to pluck it out because we want to preserve all the circumference. So we need to pluck all this out before we move on to the next step. So here's the inner seam here. I have some serging I need to pluck out and a little bit of this hem. Now I've got a bit of serging to pluck out. For those who don't know how to pluck out serging, I think I have a short video on it. I know I have an explanation with graphics in one of my formal videos. I don't remember. If I have it, I'll link it up above. At the very least, I can put in a graphic that shows which threads that you just want to slide out. I like to slide them out. I mean, I guess you could break them. I don't like to clean up a lot of the little tiny threads that are left behind when you snip and when you do a whole lot of breaking. So that's why I use the back of my seam ripper to pull it out. I had a comment once telling me I was using my seam ripper wrong. I do it this way on purpose, and I'm sure a lot of you out there do that too. Anyway, I don't need to show this whole process, but I will be back when I have got all of the inseam picked out from side to side. See you in a second. All right, I'm back from picking out that crotch seam, and you can see the front and back pieces here. And I'm going to fold the legs on top of each other, one on top, one on bottom, so that we can see the shape of the crotches, the front and the back. There. We can clearly see the shape of the crotch here and the leg. This has to go. So this goes up into the waist, and what I'm going to do is take a very long ruler for this pair, and I'm going to draw what I want to cut off. I'm going to come as straight as I can down from this center seam here and just kind of gently taper it into the leg. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Now let's get our trusty scissors. I'm going to layer this exactly one on top of the other as evenly as possible. And I am just going to cut on that line, and I absolutely love my trusty Kai scissors. I have an Amazon link in my description if you are interested in looking these up. I do get a small commission from purchases from my Amazon links. But truly, I love these shears. Okay, so let's do the other side. And I don't think I like how I left a little corner down here, so I'm just gonna trim that off so that it looks a little bit nicer. Let's pin this up from the hem up. I want to preserve as much fullness as I can in this, and it looks like this has a 1/4 inch seam allowance because it was serged. So I will sew in a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well. This one is the back, and it looks like it has a zipper in it, and it was a pressed open seam, so I'll probably just taper it with my serger instead of doing each seam separately. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a time frame for this, so we're trying to do it as quickly as possible. So pin the other side, and then we'll take it to the serger and see what it looks like. Let's talk about what happens if the circumference of your skirt is too narrow for comfort. There's a couple of things that come to my mind, and if you have other options, please put it in the comments to help us all out so we can find out maybe other ideas. But the first one that comes to my mind is a slit. You can put a slit in the side, but you've got to keep in mind that if it's a narrow skirt, it's going to be quite leggy. So your leg is going to try to push out and there's not enough fabric to cover it, so the fabric's going to pull back. But it is an option. Personally, I wouldn't put it in the front or back just for that very reason. A side slit would be better. And of course, it depends on how long the dress is. If it's a really, really long dress, sometimes a very elegant leggy dress would be really appropriate. If it's a shorter dress, just keep all that in mind. And in the case of my client, because we're doing a quick turnover with this, I've already informed her that if it's a little bit too narrow, what we're going to look at is just putting in a quick slit to give her a little bit more movement. The second idea, which I think is a really fun idea, especially if the skirt is short and flouncy, is to put in some godets. Now, if you're not familiar with a godet, it's basically a triangular piece that you set into a seam to give it some flair. Here's a really great place where you can get creative. Think about putting a complementary fabric in that seam as a godet, or even lace. If you're converting a long skirt or jumpsuit into one shorter, then you could actually use the bottom part of the leg that you cut off to use those as your godet pieces. Now here's the thing about godets. I wouldn't just put it in the front and back seam where you have to split it open to begin with, because then you're only going to have fullness in the front and the back, and when you walk it's going to go between your legs and just kind of be awkward. I would put it on at least 4 seams. If you have 4 seams, put one on the sides, put one in the front and the back, and that would be a really, really cute way to force this to work. So yes, you can make it work. You just might have to be a little bit creative. So there's some options for you to widen your circumference if you should need it. With the seam sewn, now all I've got to do is just replace those little bits of hemming that I had to take out, and I do have a cover stitch machine, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover stitch that, and we're going to take a look at this on the dress form. That was so easy, I can hardly believe it myself. So here, modeling the dress, ta-da! Helga the dress form. She hasn't been on for a while, and you can see how lovely it looks. Let's take a look at the entire length. That's 60 inches, folks, and I think that my client is going to be just fine with that. What an easy alteration. Is this one that you have done? Is this one that you would think about doing? Do you have any other thoughts that I didn't mention that others might like to hear? Please drop it in the comments below. Be sure to check out my playlists. I've got some that might be useful for you to watch, so be sure you check those out, and I will see you in the next video.